PMG, it stands for Project Management Guide. It's a tool to help plan and implement a project and event. And it's also a means to approve whatever your project is. And it's usually approved by the chapter's board of directors. And sometimes, depending on the nature of the event, it may go to your general membership for approval. And also, if you need money to run your event, then you need to have this guide put together so that your chapter knows what you're going to use the money for. You can't just say, hey, I need $200. Okay, well, we need to know what it's going to be for. How are you going to use it? And then also, it's a good documentation for future references. So one of the key elements when you're in a leadership role in your chapter is that you want to leave it in a better place than where you found it in, where you found it. So having this documentation for whatever project is just going to set up the future project chairs for success. And there's no reason to reinvent the wheel from year to year. So it's just being cognizant and being a good project leader to document all this for future references. So how do I use it? So before your project begins, there's a set of questions that's basically the who, what, when, how, and why. And that is what you present to your board of directors or your general membership for approval. So they know what the event is, what the intent is, how are you going to use the money. And then it just kind of gives them a snapshot of what's going to happen. And then when the project is finished, there's 2 other questions or 3 other questions that basically allows you to evaluate the event and then also make recommendations for the future. And then also your final budget is part of those questions. Whether you made money, you broke even, you lost money, all that is part of the evaluation process. So how do you identify what your events are? In the Jaycees, there are 4 pillars that your projects fall under. Does anybody know what those are?
Local economic growth, growth and empowerment.
Well, the pillars above that.
Like community, individual development, ways and means, and business.
You're almost on the right track. So it's community and membership and individual kind of go together. And then you have your business, and then you have your international area.
Or nothing but medicine.
Yep. And then also events on the state level, such as this, falls under that international umbrella as well. And that's really the basic fundamentals of the organization as far as what the Jaycees was founded on. Other organizations may focus on 1 or 2 of those elements, but the Jaycees has all 4 that chapters should be providing events that fall under all of those. So the first one that we're going to talk through is the business area, which you can read on what kind of events fall under that, such as public relation events, like if you have a schedule that you send press releases out, that would fall under that. If you have a strategic planning session, kind of like today, this could fall under that. Any kind of fundraising events that you have for the chapter would also fall under the business area. So this is what Yvette was alluding to as far as the different categories under the business area. So you have the economic development, and you can see what kind of events fall under that, which would be like the fundraising events. And then you also have corporate social responsibility, which that one is a little hard to categorize for me, but this is the official description. So the next pillar is the community area, which that's always the fun area for members. It's the community enrichment. It's pretty straightforward. It is exactly what you think it is, where it's the volunteering events. It's also the government involvement. So if your chapter goes to a city council meeting or something on the state level, if maybe you want to meet with one of your state officials or even the governor, then something like that would fall under this area. And then also any children and youth events like OB would fall under this area, which is the best project. It's my favorite too. So you can see some other ideas and examples like the blood drives that chapters have been running this year. And then also, if your chapter has Adopt a Highway, that would also fall under the community area. And again, this also has a local corporate social responsibility section, which is again, one that I don't really know, honestly, what would fall under that. Does anybody know what could fall under that?
If you were working with the agency that wanted to talk about recycling or even diversity inclusion projects that you might integrate with them, then that would be considered a social responsibility.
Okay. Okay. So the next pillar is the individual area or the membership area. So this is another straightforward area that involves all your membership recruitment events, but also your retention events, the social aspect of the organization. And then you can see how this is broken down with your personal development events, and then also your retention and recruitment events. So I joined the organization for this area because I gravitate towards the personal enrichment type events and all the different types of seminars that the chapter held. So I just always have gravitated toward this, and I always enjoy seeing members grow, see their own JC growth and their own personal growth. So I've always loved this area, and I have very fond memories of this area. And also it's a stretch for me because I, much like President-elect Andrea, where I'm not a social person. So being involved in these being involved in these projects really, really put me outside my comfort zone, and being nervous and being uncomfortable just allowed me to learn and grow as a JC. So look at me now.
Look at you, Carmen.
I've told this story before, but when I first joined and had to stand in front of people, I would have biologic body reactions. Like I would either have to throw up or I would have to use the bathroom. So everyone, I think, has some sort of nervous reaction, and mine was just kind of extreme. So,
got totally over that.
How long did that last for you, Carmen?
well, I realized how, I figured out how to get over that was creating personalities. I'm not a multiple personality.
I went to the grave room at the wrong time.
But I would, if I had to present, I would try to turn it into a skit of some sort, so I'm not myself.
So it's like you're playing somebody else.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. So it was a way that I could laugh at myself, and then people could also be laughing. So I remember one time I had to present, we did a date auction, which has been an idea tossed around on the state level. And so I was the project chair, and I didn't really want to talk about signing people up to be auctioned off as dates. So I brought my old Barbie dolls. And so I created like this whole little skit. I was under the table and I had my Barbie dolls on the table, and
Like
so
Trixie.
right. So it was just things like that that I had to figure out worked best for me in being in front of people. That was a fun window with work. So, the last area is the international area, which also encompasses state functions. So in North Carolina, we have 3 priority projects that fall under the international area, which are the Duke Cancer Center in Durham. It's the North Carolina Jaycees Burn Center in Chapel Hill. And then it's the Girls Cottage at Lake Waccamaw Boys and Girls Home, which is towards Wilmington. And so these 3 entities were decided on years ago by the Jaycees that they would be priority. And so chapters will run events that support these 3 entities. Now, chapters don't necessarily have to include that in their programming year after year, but it's a good idea, especially the Burn Center. It's got our name on it. So I always, as chapters are having their planning sessions, just kind of keep that in mind as you're scheduling events, to consider having events that support these 3 organizations. And then on the JCI USA level, they do have a couple of priority projects, the Nothing But Nets program, HOBie, which several of us have been part of HOBie, and then also Peace is Possible.
What does HOBie stand for?
The HOBie program stands for the Hugh O'Brien Youth Leadership Seminar, which Hugh O'Brien was an actor back in the 50s. So his claim to fame was playing
Was it Wyatt?
Wyatt Earp or the Lone Ranger or
Wyatt.
one of those Western characters. So it's a leadership program. It's a 3-day weekend for rising high school juniors. And it's kind of like a JC seminar for the 16-year-olds. And North Carolina is blessed to be able to have 2 seminars each year, one in Raleigh and one in the Winston-Salem area. So it's fantastic. It's a fantastic program. Hopefully it can be in person in 2021. Fingers crossed. And I heard, I don't know if it's official yet, on the JCI USA level for next year, they are going to be incorporating mental wellness and mental health as a priority. So that's become in the forefront of society. So the JCI USA is including that for next year. So you may see different projects coming out that focuses on mental wellness. So here's a review of events that can come under the international area that we've already gone over. And again, there's different categories that fall under this, which is another one that I haven't touched on is inter-organization, which if a couple of chapters want to come together and do a project, or even 2 states that come together to run a project, then it would fall under that. We are very close with the South Carolina Jaycees. So we've done events together before. We've met in the Charlotte area and had events. So it would fall under that inter-organization category. Okay, now it's quiz time, and this is.
You didn't tell me I was supposed to say no.
So this is interactive as well with Zoom. So those that are on Zoom will have to yell out your name or something if you want to chime in and participate. So the first question is, what does PMG stand for? Well, y'all were raising your hands. You could shout out your name.
Project management.
Okay. Did you hear that in the Zoom land?
We did. And
What? Did she get
Is there a question?
There's chat things that are popping up. Derek, can you monitor that as we go through? but maybe not have your face like zoomed in.
I feel bad because we can kind of see the next slide.
Portia answered it.
Oh, yeah, they can see the next slide, please.
Oh, okay.
So that's why they're not answering.
Oh,
This is when you should. Just cheat.
We're being honest.
Exactly, it's cheating. Where's the
honest.
sportsmanship in that?
Let's do the-
But we see the stuff with answer.
You're being resourceful.
I don't know how to do that.
That is a skill, Jaycees. You sure.
Well, we'll bring the heat then, guys. We'll bring the heat. No.
I don't know how to turn that off.
I already have the answers anyway.
Not all of it. Oh yeah, there you go. We can't see the next slide now, so that's good.
Okay, well, waiting for this to,
Because you need it.
well, so y'all can see it.
Just stop sharing your screen.
Can I do this? Well, then they can't see.
Yeah, if you just ask us the questions, we could hear you.
And then share the screen once the quiz is over. Yeah.
Oh, okay, I can do that.
Just so it's fair.
Wait, are we getting something for this? Cause I'm all in.
Her and dying love and gratitude.
I'm back out.
Knowledge is power.
I'm just joking.
Okay. Okay. Next question. How many questions are in the pre-PMG?
Cindy,
Lexi.
Okay, I heard Cindy first.
7.
Yep. Okay. And last question, how many North Carolina JC priority projects do we have? Caroline. 3.
So you're supposed to say and name the answer?
Yes.
Yeah,
Okay.
cool. Okay, so let me see how to get them back on the screen. Okay. Still, I don't know how to do that part. Okay, we're just going to go with it. Okay. So the first question is primary purpose, and this is to give a brief statement of what your event is. This is basically, this project is XYZ. So it needs to be one reason and not like 5 things listed where it's like, and this, and this, and this. You need one. Because further down, there's going to be a section where you can list those additional things. But you need, for this primary purpose, what is the main thing? So if it's a fundraising event, that's obviously, the primary purpose is to raise X amount of dollars for whatever company. So, core examples.
So I think if you do presentation mode.
Yeah, you got to do that display thing for us to see it again.
Yeah, there you go.
Cool, okay. So core examples is the first one. It says gain public exposure for the chapter by running a high visible, popular event, but then you also want to increase membership, increase participation, and raise money. I mean, that's all the ands and the ands and the ands. So another one is just to say to raise money. Okay. So why are these bad examples?
Rob.
Okay, Rob?
Because the first one has too many things, and you only need to list one thing
Uh-huh.
that you want to do. And then the second one isn't descriptive enough. It's just stating a purpose, but not really giving them meat of what you want to do.
Okay. Very good. So here are examples of how you can reword those to make it a little more substantial and a little bit more exact on what you want to do. So the first is to run a whatever, to raise money for, and you could be a little bit more specific and actually put how much money you want to raise in there. So that way you can have that as a metric system, as your goal. Another example is also to run whatever the project is to raise money for your chapter. So that would be, your chapter fundraising events that support your chapter. And then also, if it's a community service type event, the last example is just, to run, the example is an Easter egg hunt. So that doesn't necessarily raise any money. It doesn't have any kind of personal enrichment type elements, but it's a community event. So the next question is where you want to list the what, the how, when, where you're giving a description of the event. So in this area, you want to be as detailed as you can about what the event is. It gives your board of directors or your general membership more of a description of what's going on with the project. So you also list your goals in this section. So if you have the additional things that you want to achieve, this is where you would put those. And this is where, it could be 1 or 2 paragraphs, depending on how complex the event is. It could be longer than that, or it could be shorter. And then you list, the who, what, when, where, why. If you have history of the event, it's also kind of nice to know that. And then, again, you want to list your goals. How does this project support your chapter plan, if your chapter has a plan on what they want to achieve? This section also has the impact of the event itself. So you list how it's going to impact the members, your chapter, and the community. Sometimes it's not really going to impact your community if it's like a social. So you can get really wordy in this area and kind of dance around the answer where you can say, if it's a social, you could just say that the members were able to bond, they were able to brainstorm other events where they can impact the community in other community events, or something like that, where you can kind of dance around how a get-together will impact your community.
Sometimes in some PMGs I've listed for that community aspect, where if we're out as a group, it does make the community more aware of the Jaycees.
Yeah, like I think Raleigh had an ice cream social earlier in the year. So if everyone was wearing Raleigh JC t-shirts, you are impacting the community as far as you're exposing other people that are at the ice cream shop about the Jaycees, and you can kind of work it that way.
Helping the economy with the social events too, right? If you go spend money at a place, then we're helping out.
There you go. Yeah, especially if it's a locally owned entity. Yeah. So in here is the goal setting. It's just a description of how you should organize your goals. The first one should be related to what your primary purpose is, and then you can organize the rest of your goals accordingly. So, kind of, what's your top priority, and then just kind of list them that way. So here's some poor examples of goals. To raise some money, okay? To involve a lot of Jaycees, okay? So, and then, to recruit some Jaycees. So why would those be bad examples?
It's not measurable. It's not specific either.
Okay. Anybody on Zoom know why these are bad examples?
Can't measure them.
Exactly. You want to kind of, if you've ever gone through a SMART goals seminar or SWOT analysis, it's kind of the same, where with these goals, you want to have, follow that acronym of SMART goals, where you want to have them specific and measurable. So here are ways that you can reword those goals to make them more specific and measurable. So you would, list how much money do you want to raise, or how many Jaycees do you want involved, or how many members do you want to recruit? So you just have to tweak those goals and make them more specific, and then you're done. So the third question is specific steps and job assignments. So this is where you're listing who's going to do what. So that's pretty straightforward. And some of the columns are questionable. You don't have to necessarily fill them out, like whether something is critical task. It's usually all yeses because everything should be considered critical. So it just depends on what the task is. But this is where you just kind of list out everything that you know up to this point. And then also listing your contacts is in this section. So like phone number, email address, not necessarily street address unless it's an event that you're having at a facility and maybe you just want to document where they're located. Like if you're having a social event at a restaurant, you may want to just list that. Or if there's a manager at that restaurant, you want to list their name. So this is just kind of an example of how you can list that out. And then also here's a description of what the different duties could be. So if you're the project manager, you're going to have a lot of assignments. So this is just an example of what some of those could be. So the fifth question is listing material, supplies, and resources needed. And then it's another graph just showing what all you're going to need. So this will change now because, a lot of things are done virtually. So we don't have to have certain things that we used to have when we were in person. But I guess going forward, if you're having virtual events, then material would be a Zoom account and internet access. So, you can kind of think through, okay, well, like today, we would need to have a hotspot or some sort of Wi-Fi connection. So it's just going to be interesting to see how the list of materials needed is going to change as we're having more virtual events. So the sixth question is your budget area, which this is always a difficult area. Some projects, they might not have a budget, but then some are just really complex. So this is just an example of, a simple budget where if you're asking for money from the chapter, you would need to list that. And then also list if you have event or items that are donated, you want to list the value of the donated items, but then also any items that you had to buy. And you want to have your income and expenses match as far as the totals. They need to be balanced. When you're in your evaluation at the end, where you're putting together your final budget, that's where you're going to be able to evaluate whether you lost money or made money or broke even. So on the preliminary side, you just need to make sure how to get those two to balance. And that's just basic accounting practice. And then the last question in the pre-PMG is describing your potential problems and solutions. So no event is perfect. There's always going to be something that happens. So as you're planning an event and putting this together, you just want to kind of walk through what could be potential problems, especially if you're going to have an event outside. What would be your plan B for weather, or something like today with new guidelines with COVID, that's a problem, so how are you gonna overcome that? So this is just, where you want to list out all the things that you can think of that may be a hurdle. All right, another quiz. Are we ready?
Can I see that question?
Yay.
No.
Okay.
True or false, the project budget does not need to be approved by anyone.
Lexi.
Lexi, what's the answer?
False.
Okay,
Right? Is that true? I don't know. I think so.
false, yes.
Hey.
Your local chapter board of directors must approve your budgets. Okay.
Sorry about this question.
You said your name before the question.
That was just one question.
No, I thought that was a question. Like, does the board need to approve? Oh, no.
Okay. How are you doing on time?
Plenty.
Okay, so let's take a stretch break real quick before we get into the rest of the training. So we can do some yoga, not really, but if we need to take a quick bathroom break, let's do that, and we'll get back to this. Or we're stretch.
Like you're coming over here and yelling at me. I'm like,
That was the one thing I was concerned about, because I know anytime you have.
Are you going to help out with the
Duplicating
football
a
game
big
next
room.
weekend?
No, I'm actually gonna be in Tennessee next week.
That project management guide is intense.
I bet so.
When it's like a normal football season, there's just so many working parts
For
that
sure.
that's a more advanced example of what we're going through.
Right.
That's fun. Are you going next weekend, Derek?
To the,
To the football game?
the state thing, I'm thinking about signing up.
Yeah.
Caroline threw me a loop and she said Ron Schneider is gonna be at the High Point Rocker Stadium. I was like, I guess
Yeah,
it's technically not a
it's the same
High Point Jaycees event, but it'd be nice if I
It
could,
does support my
but it
job.
does support her. So,
If you wanna keep me employed,
yeah.
how much is the ticket?
Maybe you can do both.
35 for.
The football game's at 9.
It's a 7:30 game.
You should do the football game. Have that one experience.
That's right, I should.
But he's already
Probably
proven
what I'll
himself
do.
once for an organization by floating down a river and saying, this is commitment.
Yeah, we've actually never done one of the football.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so me, Rob, and I are all doing it. I was like, well, I kind of have to, 'cause I'm gonna be president next year, right?
Can't do such.
It won't be as bad. I mean, you're just
Is one of them
dipping
president?
your
or
toe
one of
into
them
this one
president?
because not all the,
Yeah,
people
yeah.
live in the whole house.
So I was like, yeah, we
She's
have to.
president, period.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think too on the, same thing for December 5th. I'm like, okay,
What's the
I
right
could just punt
I better
and
not
go
be
to the
president next year.
Winston-Salem Jaycees parade. I'm like, I could do that. That could be my Jaycee
General
thing.
election is
Or
supposed to be on Monday.
I could go to the Raleigh Sand thing in the morning.
You
And
should.
then drive to Freedom County for
Yeah.
their holiday
And
parade,
right
and
now,
then drive to
it's
Greenville for their
freshman.
evening
Who
holiday
needs one
parade.
freshman?
Like,
Because
Yeah, I'll do that.
That's what I'm like, that's, if I wanna stretch, that's what I can go
Breakfast
for.
with
So,
Santa tickets end tomorrow.
they tomorrow's on my
Yeah.
mind. So I think that's what I'm gonna do, but
I have no idea.
when I saw that, I was like, oh, I could just pop over and be in their holiday. I can check it off, or I could drive all over the state.
So already,
I actually feel bad, because it's like, Winston is the closest chapter besides High Point.
Make sure they don't ask each other.
that means the next
What?
one.
So I think I might go early.
Yeah.
That's fine. You can have my- But, so not being in 2019, Robert, it's not a JC market anymore. It used to be, so NC West used to be a Winston sales market, and some of them used to be Raleigh project. So,
Did
but
both of them disconnect from the?
Yeah.
One in the west?
this was the 2020 first year it used it.
Oh, wow.
They when there's a race in January, so right before. But I mean, Shira's running it in 2021. Connor ran it in 2020 because with COVID and all that, it was just.
Yeah.
But, no, like me and Rob ran it in 2021. And I is a rising junior this year.
I think, well, you, an automatic, if you were a seminar chair, that if you have a child, of age, they automatically go.
Yeah. So we actually, me and Rob are head of Leadership in Action this year, well, next year. So we had the first conference call on Thursday. And, we asked Stacy, because Stacy's director of recruitment, and she's like, oh yeah, don't worry about that.
Yeah.
So, but Naya's still writing the essay for her school and doing all that, because we're making her do that.
Yeah.
So.
And I was thinking that I don't know if they're able to go for free. I don't remember the rules, but I remember the part about, if you child, they automatically.
Yeah. We're super excited.
Yeah,
I was telling her, I said, if you're like free that weekend, it's depending on what you do, you can either be there for Thursday night to Sunday morning or Sunday afternoon, or you can just do like, yeah, day of stuff, so. But like facilitator, that's my favorite thing to do, so each tries to do 2 adults per group. So it's 2 people over the age of 21 and 1 between 16 and 20 are in charge of 12 ambassadors, so 12 are juniors. And you just experience the whole weekend with them, and it's just, I love them. That sounds so fun. It's
Kind of
just,
like what Carmen was talking about.
yeah,
This is short.
yeah.
But I don't like doing it, I like it.
Yeah, like you see them come in on Friday morning and like they don't know anybody unless somebody happens to be there from the same school, but they shouldn't be in the same group. And like where they are on either Saturday or Sunday, like it's crazy. It really, it's just crazy. But yeah, no, I absolutely love Kobe.
But I was thinking, I'm like, okay, well.
Okay, are we ready to get back in and wrap this up?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, are we still connected in Zoom?
Yep.
Yes.
Cool. So, so we ran the event, so now what? So, chat. Is there any questions that came up in the chat room?
Jamie just said yes.
Oh, okay. So, so you ran the event, so now what do I do? So I'm gonna put Sam on the spot, and this would be like, all the bingo games for the whole year. So now you're done hosting bingo at the fairgrounds, so now what do you do? So this is where you're going to evaluate how all those events ran. So again, this is going to be the last few questions in the PMG, which is, I guess, 3 questions, 8, 9, and 10. So the first one is where you want to list solutions and recommendations for the future. So, any kind of changes that you saw while you were running the event. And this is where you want to be as honest as you can, but also constructive. And I've ran events, and I've also seen this written, where I just put, don't run this event again. Like it was a disaster, don't do it again. So,
Yeah.
I mean, you have to be honest.
Yeah, so you don't want to, if it was a failure, that's fine, because in the Jaycees, that is a safe zone, I feel like, where you have the luxury and the liberty to run an event, and if it fails, you're not going to get fired, you're not going to get exiled, but you also don't want to tell the future leadership to do it again, because you're just setting them up for failure. And especially if it's an event that lost a lot of money, you may want to question, I don't know if we want to do that again. So, just be as honest and constructive as possible. And you could even get down to, I don't know if I would document it necessarily, but maybe have a side conversation if there's people that are on the committee that might not necessarily you want for future years. You may want to, just have that side conversation. Or if there's someone that's great, you gave them some tasks, they just ran with it, you may want to list, hey, I definitely want Catherine on this team next year. She does great in this area, so. With no milk cream pie?
No.
Oh.
Don't put me in documentation like, oh,
Right.
she does a great job, please make sure to contact her.
So this is just recapping what I just said. And also, if you have time between events, you may want to have kind of like a decompression kind of meeting. You kind of go through what worked, what didn't work with your committee. Sometimes you don't have time to do that, but you may be able to shoot an email to everybody and just say, hey, what do you think we did well? What do you think we could change for the future?
So a good idea is also to get public opinion on that too.
Yeah.
Like with the chamber, we send out an email to people that attended the event, and maybe just get a couple of people's opinion, because what they saw, you might not know, or you like completely failed over here, but they had no clue that you know.
Yep. So the next question is where you're going to evaluate your goals and, just summarizing the event itself. And then also, you had your impact from before, but now this is where you can kind of really go deeper into how did it impact the community, the members, and the chapter itself. And again, it's okay if you didn't achieve all your goals. Like if it's an event that raised money and you didn't hit that goal, it's okay. Just, document it. And then a suggestion is, you can say you ended up raising X amount of dollars, but then also put the percentage of your goal achieved. Because sometimes that's easier for people to understand if they see a percentage. And also, it makes a difference comparing a small chapter to a large chapter if you go by percentages. So you don't have to do that. That's just a tip that you can include. So here are some examples where from before, wanted to have so many PR outlets so you could see an example of how you would want to write that goal. If you raised a certain amount of dollars for a foundation, if you wanted to involve so many Jaycees, and then also if you recruited any events. And then here are some examples of those impact statements that you would want to put here. So you can just see how it's broken down. And depending on the event, again, the impact could be really, really long, like Kobe. That's a lot of impact going on. Or it could be, just short and sweet, depending on the event. So then the last question is where you want to have all your supporting documentation, such as that final budget, any kind of pictures or copies of contracts. If it's an event that requires the chapter to have a liquor license, if you're serving alcohol, you have a copy there. Any kind of press releases or screenshots of the event posted online on social media, you would want to have just all that documentation. And then I think this is the date, but I'm not sure because I guess we're getting into that in the board of directors meeting on when second semester PMGs are due and then who they're due to. So that date may change based on the board of directors meeting this afternoon, but it'll definitely be advertised. So I just had that listed in here. So are there any questions? said that kind of fun. Any questions? Great. So I do want to leave you with that not only is it important to document this for your chapter for future leadership, but also you get recognized on the state level and on the national level for all your hard work. Because if you don't toot your own horn, who's going to do it for you? And some people have worked really, really hard. And if you're the president of your chapter, it's up to you to recognize those members and highlight them, because you're just doing a disservice. And not everyone is motivated by recognition, but you never know. So we have a convention coming up that's going to highlight the second semester of this year, but also the whole year. And so these PMGs are going to be recognized at that banquet that would be on Saturday night of the weekend. And then also whoever would win, whatever is like first or second place, is submitted to the national level. And so chapter members and project members can have that opportunity to be recognized on the national level. And I actually have something to give out later on today that was quite a surprise. So it's just another piece to the project management system. And if chapters don't care about documenting this, if they don't care about that recognition, then I would still document the project and have that on hand just for your local chapter's purposes. So that concludes the training